Hey guys, so for this video, I'm going to be doing a movie review of the movie Strays. Yeah, I watched it in theaters. I saw the previews, and I thought it would be fun. I mean, it's a rated R comedy about dogs going to bite a man's tongue off. So it sounds like the perfect movie for me. So so to get in the movie starts with the border terrier, Reggie, and he lives with his owner, Doug, and his owner hates him. And throughout the first 10-20 minutes, I was like, why the fuck does he keep Reggie around if he hates him? And it's, revealed later on in the movie that he only kept him because his girlfriend, who he cheated on, left him and wanted to take Reggie with her, but he decided to keep him out of spite. So, he keeps Reggie because he's a piece of shit, essentially. But of course, Reggie believes that Doug loves him, and he just is pretty much a dog. Dogs are the most loyal animals in the world, and they'll love you even if you're a piece of shit. So Doug, he continually tries to abandon him, but every time he abandoned him, he ends up coming back. So he decides that he's going to go to the city and abandon him. And it just pissed me off because people like this are just crap. I don't know why they don't just, if they don't want a dog, give it to someone who A, wants it, or 2, give it to a shelter who can take care of it until someone finds some place for it. Especially pisses me off when it's puppies and kittens. People will literally abandon them, even throw them in the trash, and it just makes me want to punch somebody. So yeah, it was making me mad, if you can't tell. Reggie, he ends up in the city, and he ends up meeting this Boston Terrier. His name is Bug. He teaches Reggie how to be a stray, and then they end up going to the dog park and meeting up with a Australian Terrier. Her name's Maggie. She is having to deal with her owner replacing her with another dog, someone who's a new toy, if you will, because she's one of the people, obviously, who treats dogs as possession. And so, once, I'm assuming she was probably a puppy when he got her, and then once the puppy, she grew into an adult, she just gets rid of her. I will admit that the new dog that they end up replacing her with, I don't know if it was Pomeranian, but it's one of those, toy dogs, the white fluffy dogs, but the voice for that dog was like, a real Valley Girl snob, and I did kind of laugh at that. But yeah, other than that, the owner pissed me off, of course. And then we meet Hunter. He is a therapy dog for old people who is a therapy dog because he failed at being a police dog. I can't recall if it's because he was too nice or too scared. I'm assuming it's the latter because he ends up wearing a cone for most of the movie because he likes it. It makes him feel good. So I'm assuming that probably makes him feel safe. And so he ends up getting it off later on in the movie, but from pretty much the entire movie, he wears that. And so they hang out, and they all end up, getting drunk. They go to, behind a bar. People are throwing out beer, and so they drink the beer that's, in the trash. And, they get drunk, and then Reggie kind of opens up to them about why he's a stray, and they tell him that his owner was abusive, and Reggie has a hard time at first, but then he says that he's going to go back to bite his dong off because it's his most prized possession. Oh, I gotta laugh. And he definitely deserves to get his dong bitten off. So yeah, they decide to go with him for moral support. They have to figure out his way home, and so they, go based on Doug's or Richie's memories of, landmarks along the way. And so, yeah, they end up in a forest where they eat mushrooms and get high, and they start ripping apart while they're high a bunch of stuffed animals. And I knew right away that they probably did something terrible because they were high and they thought it was stuffed animals, and sure enough they finally sober up and they realize they ripped apart an entire family of rabbits. And so yeah and then Doug gets carried off by an eagle, and then Reggie ends up saving him. Then they ultimately get caught by animal control in the forest because they were out there looking for a girl who'd gotten lost, and they end up in a dog pound. Of course, they think it's because they ripped apart a family of rabbits. In reality, they're just, strays, and put them in the pound and all that. Bug reveals that he became a stray because he was one time a pet to a girl, and she accidentally stepped on him, and of course in defense he bit her. And so her parents decided, hey, we're gonna put Puppy down because he bit someone in self-defense. And oh my god, I just wanted to punch those parents. It pisses me off when people get, especially puppies or kittens, and they react in self-defense when specifically children who are rougher with them, hurt them, and they respond, whether, intentionally hurt them or accidentally hurt them, and they put it all on the animal. They will put the animal down. They treat animals as if they're nothing but, just possessions, and it pisses me off. It did remind me of, in this particular storyline, did remind me of Ace from League of Super Pets, which, to be honest, if they ripped off that storyline from the League of Super Pets, and that's honestly just so sad that you'd have to do that, because that was not a very good movie. Reggie has a change of heart about biting Doug's dong off, because while he was high, he had a hallucination of Doug telling him or convincing him that it was really Reggie's fault that, Doug was abusive to him. Of course, Bug gets upset about it, and they end up going their own ways. So Bug ends up leaving, and on his way back, I'm assuming home, he runs into the girl who had gotten lost, and she automatically tries to go towards him because he's a dog, and he kind of reacts, growls at her because he's had a terrible history with humans, and so he is very shy around her. But then she starts crying, and then he ends up going up to her, and she starts petting him and hugging him and stuff like that. And Maggie is able to track Bug down along with the animal control or the police, whichever, who end up taking the girl and getting her back to where she's supposed to be. And so it's a really sweet moment that kind of shows you that, well, once again, dogs are very much loyal, and I always do get emotional when it comes to kids and animals. So cute together. Yeah, so now that they're back together, Maggie then uses the cloth that Reggie had around his neck, his collar or whatever. He uses it to track Reggie down, go to track him to his house. Reggie, of course, has finally come home, and he is, I think you kind of say, thinking about everything, and so he ends up going into the backyard and burying his tennis ball, and then he comes into the house and he ends up facing off against Doug, and Reggie kind of has this whole conversation about Doug and is finally kind of giving him his a piece of his mind, but of course Doug is a piece of shit, and so he actually tries killing Reggie now, because he views Reggie as the cause of all his problems. The fact that he no longer has a girlfriend because he cheated on her, the fact that he no longer is getting money from his parents so that pay his rent, and the reason why he gets evicted, and he also, I guess, destroyed his bong, Reggie did, and so, yeah, he decides he's gonna kill Reggie. The others come in time to stop him, and so they have this kind of fight, which results in the others holding him down. They take a hold of his pants and his shirt, and they were holding him down, and so Reggie bites his dong off, and yes, he actually does, because apparently there's a scene where the doctors say they can't reattach it. But yeah, the result of the fight, there ends up being a fire, and so his apartment burns down, and the other, dogs make an escape before, anybody can do anything. So, yeah. Then we get, of course, the whole epilogue. Bug becomes the pet of the girl he helped save, and you kind of get a sense of, I guess, the environment he is in now, because he's humping the couch, and the parent, the dad of the girl, he sees him, he's like, Reggie, come on, don't hump the couch. And so he's kind of like, I felt like it was a very much healthier, I guess, relationship between Bug and his family than the previous one, and so I'm happy that Bug got a family to love him. Maggie becomes the police dog because one of the officers saw how good her nose was, and so Hunter has finally accepted his roles as a therapy dog, and he's able to finally stand up to the other dogs in the park who keep mocking him. So I guess he was kind of, I don't know if he was having an issue because he's so big, and people expect him to be really vicious, but he's really not, and so he's kind of like really scared and shy, but he's finally able to kind of, overcome that by the end. And of course, there was this whole thing about Reggie and Hunter liking each other, and people kept saying it in the movie, and they kept denying it, but yeah. So Reggie decides that he's going to stay a stray so that he can help other strays, which is cute and incredibly sad, because there are so many strays, but he ends up visiting Bug and his owner, the girl, and she also ends up having a brother, and so they will play with him in the backyard, and then Reggie will sometimes come over and play with them as well. And then at the end of the scene, we get the mailman, who they call the devil, and so he's like, they're like cussing him out, and the mailman's like, he's just like smiling and saying how cute they were, which made me laugh. But yeah, my thoughts on the movie. I thought there were some funny moments, but there were like moments like when Bug was threatening himself in the mirror, because as there's some animals that can't tell that the animal in the mirror is actually themselves, and so and then of course one of the landmarks he could remember, he called the devil in the sky, and when we finally got to it, it pans over, and it was actually the billboard with the mailman on it, so he calls the mailman the devil in the sky. And I thought it was hysterical. Unfortunately, it was mostly like cringe humor, focusing a lot, way too much on Hunter's big dong, because yes, they reference that so many times. I feel like that's the only reason they made them Great Danes. They could do that. A lot of shit jokes. Well, one particular one that I kind of thought was funny, kind of, because it made me nostalgic. It was a scene in the pound when they're trying to escape, and so their plan was to every dog crap, and to get the animal control officer to come open the door to clean it up, and they could escape. But during that scene, they decided to play London Bridge by Fergie because it happened to have the word shit in the first few lines. Which, cringy, but also was kind of making me nostalgic because I did grow up listening to that song. Conflicted emotions there. But yeah, but another plus was there were a lot of cute dogs. They actually had real dogs. And they didn't have the dogs, when they had them talk, they weren't like really cringy, you know, moving a mouth, making it look so incredibly unnatural. They were mostly just, you know, cute dogs. And so I always loved dogs. Reggie, of course, was adorable. I couldn't figure out what kind of breed it was. Apparently he's like a border collie. No, border terrier. Yeah, border terrier. So yeah, he was adorable throughout the entire movie. And the fact they actually got Will Ferrell to voice him, I thought was hysterical and honestly perfect, because although man, I know Will Ferrell most from Elf, and so he always has given me a innocent persona with his characters, and so having him voice this really cute, naive dog was perfect casting, especially when you're gonna have him go bite someone's dong off. It just makes it funnier. And of course, Bug was voiced by Jamie Foxx, I believe. Thank God they didn't do Kevin Hart. I'm so sick and tired of Kevin Hart voiceovers at this point. Yeah, he was good in it, but I just thought Bug was adorable as well. He's like a Boston Terrier. They're so cute. And then of course, another voice actor that I had to laugh at, Sofia Vergara. Anyways, she voiced Delilah the couch, and so she's the couch that Bug has a crush on and he keeps humping. And it just made me laugh. Yeah, I just couldn't picture her like, she goes into interviews and, you know, she has her like, you know, resume of all the movies she's been in, and just, it's like Modern Family, and then they have like, she voiced a couch in Strays. It just made me laugh. The creators of the movie, the director was Joss Greenbaum. He has done Fresh Off the Boat episodes and New Girl episodes, so he has, I guess you could say, some work in the industry. The writer was Don Perrault. He did American Vandal. It's a true crime parody for Netflix, and then Players, a sports documentaries parody for Netflix, I think. But yeah, so I guess he's very much a writer of parodies. And then the cinematography was Tim Orr. He did Pineapple Express, along with some other popular comedies. So I guess you could say, having looked at their works, it's not surprised that they're on this movie. The reception for the movie, it only made back about half of the $46 million budget. I'm wondering how much of that budget went towards, you know, getting rights for the music that they played, because as far as I remember, it was a lot of like popular pop songs, and it's a rated R, so I wasn't expecting it to make a lot of money. So the Rotten Tomatoes, 56% of the 148 critics were positive, with an average rating of 5.4 out of 10, and the consensus was cruelly effective and effectively crude. Strays is more amusing than hilarious, but this comedy's scatterbot humor is partially off-put by its surprisingly big heart. I mean, there were some sweet moments, but honestly, I think the terrible humor overdid that. It's kind of the opposite for me. I did love the kind of storyline between Bug and the girl that he found. You know, this dog that was pretty much tossed aside and, you know, eventually find someone who does love him. And then, yeah. Honestly, I think that was the only part I really, really jived with, storyline-wise, I think. So, I was, I guess you could say I was kind of disappointed with how unfunny it was for me. My brother wanted to see it, even though after I saw it, I convinced him to see Bottoms with me instead. But yeah. So yeah, that was my review of Strays. So I mean, if you're wanting to see it, I mean, I'm not forcing you not to go see it. I mean, if you think it sounds like something you still would enjoy, just go see it. But for me, it had the wrong kind of humor for me, I guess I could say. So yeah, that was my review of Strays. So if you did like this review, give it a like, subscribe to get notification for all the videos I'll be doing. You guys have a nice night, stay safe out there, and talk to you later.